la ka ke nna Nare Mphela ke tswa ke le Limpopo mo ga-matlala flag fontaine. Ka 2014 ke bile le problemo le principala ya ba ile gore a tsena ka tlelaseng a ruta a thoma a ruta o bolela ka di-gay a bolela ka di-gay ya bataba tša gore bana ba sekolo ba botšiša gore na gay ke mang gona ka mo a ntšhupa a re gay she le na le yona ka mo tlelaseng ya bataba tša gore ka molata ka mmotšiša gore menere o nroa gore ke nna gay mo pela bana ba sekolo ore ba ntšee jwang cause of ke tlhompha bana ba bannyane le ba bagolo ene a se gore bana ba ba tsebe gore na ke motho wa mogutama ba a tseba bangwe ba ke tsene le bona go tšwela primaryng ko gae ya bataba tša gore principala a go mola tšea koloi a tšwa a tsamaya ka ya go class teacher ka e le Mr. Mashitišo ka mo tlhalosetša ka probleme ke kopanang le yona. Mashitišo a tlompotša gore principala o re o kgopela tshwarelo a ka sa repeata a e tla tlelaseng principala a tšea buka LO a iphetolla a re botša gore di-gay ko Egypt ba di bolaya nageng tša ka ntle ka mo South Africa di-gay a ba di bolaya ka gore di na le ditokelo. Ngwana sekolo a repeata buša rena e bang gay ke mangana mo sekolong a ntšhupa a re šwa le mmone le tsena lena ka tlelaseng ka kwata ka lla ka tšwa ka tlelaseng ka lata class teacher ka mo tlhalosetša the way principal a bušeletšang ka gona.
In 2014, Iranti has a partner organization, the Limpopo LGBTI organization, who contacted us, and Nare had then reached out to the Limpopo LGBTI organization and to the coordinator in particular of the organization. And Cindy then contacted us and said, oh, we have a case of, I think it's a transgender woman who's faced discrimination at school. Could you please come and meet her? And so the Iranti team traveled to Limpopo and met with the LGBTI organization and with Nare. Iranti then asked our pro bono lawyers, Weber Wenzel, to represent Nare as a client in the matter.
In terms of Section 9, which is our equality section in the Constitution, the legislature has created PROPUDA, which is the Promotion of Equality and Prevention of Undiscrimination Act. And what that act does is it gives people redress when they have been discriminated against in order for them to approach a court within their area in order to get a claim or an apology, etc. That's what's available to trans students or anyone in a situation where they feel that they are not being treated equally simply based on the fact that they are trans.
Even though South Africa has this legislation on the promotion and prevention of discrimination in South Africa that encourages the establishment of equality courts, like at the magistrates level, it should be done much more speedily. This case of Nare is the first equality court case heard in Limpopo Province, firstly. And then it's the first transgender equality court case matter in South Africa. And I think it's great. I believe there could have been delays in hearing this case because judges simply didn't know what to do.
Dikgwedi ke le ka gara sekolo gore ke kgone go fetša ka case e ke kgone ke ya Gauteng ke tseba le gore ke ya sekolong or ke o nyaka mmereko.
The first reality that one needs to face is that unfortunately in South Africa our court systems take quite long. That's an unfortunate thing, and it happens irrespective of the fact that one's been discriminated. It happens in commercial matters, it happens in all matters. And so the fact that the wheel of justice turns quite slowly in South Africa is not necessarily an indication of where South Africa puts people's rights, where South Africa puts LGBTI rights or trans issues. I think it's a systemic issue which is a far wide issue which is about our judiciary and our judicial systems. It takes a lot on a person. You've got to now tell your story to the world. You've got to now go through formal processes. And sometimes that's not good for an individual. And at the time, Nare was still in high school, and our biggest thing was getting her through high school and getting her through her matric. And so her matric year was largely spent trying to communicate with the Department of Education.
Skolo ke tsene matriki ka 2014. Ka ngwala examination ya ka ke le ka ra di stress ke ruiwa ke ya sekolong gore ke tshaba gore ke fitla sekolong meniere wa mpethe lo se o dire selo o thoma o tshela le batho e ke thoma ke ya toilet gore ke sa feel comfortable ka baka la gore o be a gona go botsa ditšhomi tše ke tsamaya le tsona gore di ntetele ko toilet di ntshware ka fase gore ke tshwere setho sa mohuta mang. So then ke rile ke boelela ke re ke nyaka go repeata grade 12 ka 2015 in College. Ya ba e le gore a re botsa gore lena ba o tšwela from other places a ke sa lenyaka ke nyaka ba momoletši fela lena ba go tšwela bo Matlala a ke sa lenyaka. Ya batla batša gore ka bona gore ke dule gae bokaone ke tle Gauteng ke tenyakele mmereko o e leng gore o ka kgona go nkhabara ka kgona go ya sekolong ka tšotša thuto tša ka pele.
So we claimed 20,000 Rand, and the first 20,000 Rand that we claimed was a suggestion from the psychologist who saw Nare. Nare had been through quite a lot psychologically, and that Nare needed to seek psychotherapy in order to be, to be better, and in order for her to process what has happened to her. The second amount which we claimed was an additional 20,000 Rand, and that amount we explained was in order to allow Nare to go back into the schooling system. The rest of the amount was an amount of 60,000 Rand which we claimed, and that is just for what we in law call your pain and suffering.
Almost 3 years later, but nonetheless, we have this great decision and judgment that also advances the rights for transgender children at school going forward. And I think that's great.
We had firstly asked that the principal, who at the time was the one who harassed and discriminated against Nare and called her names and othered her, we asked that he be taken for sensitization training. The last thing which we asked for, which we're anxiously waiting to see how far he went with, is we asked that the Department of Education be ordered to come up with policy on transgender issues and on LGBTI issues at large. And what we suggested is that the South African Human Rights Commission should be given oversight over what the policy will look like, because it's one thing to have a policy which doesn't speak to the issues, where they haven't consulted with the trans community. And so it's very important to us that that policy is drawn up properly. It's very important to us that that policy represents the voice of the trans community and not just some textbook idea of how things should be.
We've really had to work on an advocacy plan that looks at almost, in a way, demilitarizing school approaches to discipline. But also, how does schools understand the inclusion of lesbian, gay, transgender and intersex kids at school in a way that becomes more inclusive. And so we find that schools use very simple techniques of discrimination, like the school uniform. In 2015, for our Transgender Day of Remembrance, we had a dialogue with the Department of Education and the trans community and actually a much broader LGBTI community, but specifically looking at transgender issues at school. And Nare attended this dialogue, spoke about her particular case. And so we've had to deal with different forms of advocacy, how to engage with the department to change the code of good practice into one that is more inclusive of diversity, that's more understanding of that schools and children come with a diverse range of gender identities, a diverse range of sexual orientations to school, and how do schools become more integrated in their approaches.
I by no means think that the policy or this judgment is going to change everything for everyone and that overnight everything's going to be okay. But I think it's a small victory and a small step in making this, making discrimination a thing of the past, making trying to be understood a thing of the past. And so I'm quite excited about the judgment, and I'm quite excited about the possibilities which it opens up for change.
Ke feel alright ka baka la gore department e tlo kgona le nkisha sekolong, ene ebile se segolo se ke se nyaka mo go bona go department kore o ka re ba ka ntšha batho ba e leng gore ba tseba ka bophelo ba motho, ba ba romele dikolong tše di fapana di-9 province tše ka moka, gore ba kgone ba botša ka bophelo ba di-LGBTI, gore na leina lela le emetse eng, ene batho ba ba so re ba tlhokomela jwang, re ba tshwara jwang. Ska kry-a motho o mongwe e le wa leloko la LGBTI a ya sekolong a nagane gore bo mmitša ka mabitso-bitso a se bang gona. So nna ke feel happy bile ke re ka case ya ka e batho bo botlhe ka moka e batho ma ba bala story saka ba kgone go kwa gore ke kwele bothoko o fitla kae, se tla ba tlhatholela something gore ge bana le bana ba bangwe ba e leng gore ba phela bophelo ba go tshwana le nna ba ska ke phitlha ba ke tsweletse cause of a se bona ke modimo, ene re na le di-rights tša gore re phele the way re nyakang ka gona. Nna ke feel happy e ke bona case ya ka mamotlha e fedile, department e bile kgona le mpusha gore ke ye sekolong.